Ooh, I can do this all day. This is, I think, one of the most highly anticipated trail trucks or ready-to-run trail trucks of the past, I dare say, 4 or 5 years. And today we're going to take a look at it. This is the all-new, ready-to-run, the VS4-10 Phoenix from Vanquish Products. Thanks for watching. Today we're taking a look at the ready-to-run version of the Vanquish VS4-10 Phoenix. The box art is absolutely fantastic as usual. It comes in 2 different colors. So you have this primer gray that I have right in front of me over here. And then there is also red that you see on the other side. I'm really glad that I got the primer gray one because this one is a tiny bit more neutral and perhaps a bit easier to customize. I think what is most interesting with this ready-to-run release is what is different to the kit version in this ready-to-run. So what have they selected electronics-wise? What do you perhaps lack? And what is different just looking at it like at first glance? I think the biggest downside, let's just do that immediately. The biggest downside of having a ready-to-run is that you do not get to experience the joy of putting this thing together. I really enjoyed building the kit version of the Phoenix. It gives you a really good understanding of the amount of work that I put in, of the amount of effort, of the level of engineering, and just the overall care that Vanquish Products has put into developing a truck that I think is a new benchmark. Let's see what we get in the box first. I'm not gonna say this time around that this is the boring stuff because with it being a fresh ready-to-run from a brand that has never released a ready-to-run, this is actually far from boring. You get a manual, then you get a manual for your radio along with a sticker sheet. So if you want to individualize the look of your Phoenix by adding a few stickers, that is included for you to have fun with. So that's cool to see. Make sure you read the manual in case you have never operated an RC truck so you don't hurt yourself or your pets or set stuff on fire or whatever trouble you can get into using one of these things in an incorrect fashion. And then this bag over here, this contains, I think, mostly wheel parts, a few shock bottoms, and a really important part as well, I think, these clamps. These clamps are used to put the bed sides on the side of your cage. And that also brings us to, I think, the most apparent difference cosmetically is the lack of bed sides in this Phoenix ready-to-run. If you do manage to see through those tinted windows, you will see that there's no interior panel included. What is included, however, is all of the parts to complete the interior. So over here you see, for example, a steering wheel, but also some outside accessories, like for example your wipers are included over here, along with a ton of spare parts. So for example, drive shaft spares, you will find those over here, and also some of the additional gear that you would need to mount to the back of the cage if you do want to run those bed sides and you want to include some lighting, for example. I knew this radio looked familiar. This is a radio that came with one of my G-Mate trucks, and I was actually really impressed with this radio. This Vanquish radio is like an updated version of this G-Mate radio. I'm still really bad at muting my stuff, so you know what channel you're watching. It is even backlit. You can store up to 15 models on this radio, which is of course pretty insane for a radio that comes with a ready-to-run truck. It is a 4-channel radio, which means that if you want to unlock the full potential of your VS4-10 Phoenix ready-to-run by adding 2 servos, you can operate all of the functions from the truck using the ready-to-run radio, which is good thinking. There's a lot of companies that release a ready-to-run truck, and then the minute you want to add full features to it, you need to switch radio systems, and with Vanquish that's not the case, so I think that's cool. If you see the button over here, because there's no battery compartment in the bottom, press that and then you can slide back the handle and that will allow you to reach this little lid over here. If you pull this back and then remove the lid entirely, you will see that this is where the batteries go. 4 AA batteries, those are also included, which I think is great thinking. So it is a very complete offering so far. Something I had a hard time deciding with the kit version of my Phoenix was whether or not I wanted to run the bed sides, just because I think that the cage work that is attached to the back of that Toyota style cap looks so good that I didn't really know if I wanted to keep that exposed or cover it up using those bed sides. Basically, they made the decision for you. I'm really not mad at all about that. It looks incredibly badass and ready for the trails with this exposed cage in the back. You can, of course, if you have, for example, a fifth wheel, you can run a spare over here. Headlights are clear. This is completely ready for you to install a light kit if you choose to do so. And like I mentioned, everything is included as well to run some lights in the rear if you want to mount some LEDs over there. The kit version that I have built of the Phoenix was the portal version. There is also a non-portal version, and that is what you see over here in this ready to run. These are what they call F10 axles with an offset pumpkin in the front and a centered pumpkin in the back. Fantastic looking axles. These tires are one of the last Vanquish product releases. These are the Falcon Wild Peaks in a red compound. These are officially licensed. Some other tires you would find look stuffed, to put it like that. So they have a rounded off profile on them, and these are incredibly square. I'm not sure what's going on inside of these tires foam wise, but it definitely feels really good. Speaking of really good, I also like these ready to run wheels that they have going on. These are the same wheels that you would find in your Phoenix kits. So these are the KMCs. These are officially licensed. I really do not dislike the way that they look. I think especially for a ready to run truck, these beadlock wheels, they look just fine. If you want to upgrade it and add some flair by throwing a really nice set of Vanquish rims on here, for example, you can of course go ahead and do that. Now, like I mentioned, these are the F10 axles. They feel incredibly loaded. It's just the same with the kit that I built. That one as well felt so incredibly heavy and planted in the bottom section of the truck. There's so much cool stuff going on over here that I definitely recommend having a look at the manual if you have not built one of these before, just to see what type of engineering goes on inside of this. These F10 straight axles, they do feature helically cut gears and also high entrance pinion gears. I know that this has become kind of like an industry standard to have like a high entrance pinion gear, but over here especially you can really see how much that flattens out that driveline, and that will make for a much smoother performing truck. What I also really like, and that was really apparent when I was building the kit, is how they have engineered this cradle for your ring and pinion gear. So you can set the mesh on that completely correctly and also have a look at all of your bearings by just taking the cradle out of the axle. These axles are not just made, I think, with ease of assembly in mind, but certainly also with ease of disassembly in mind, meaning that it is really easy to get inside of them and give them some maintenance and see that everything is functioning as it should. If we move inward from the axles, you will immediately see that there are stainless steel links, really nicely executed, also I think with performance in mind. So the top links are a tad thinner than the bottom links. All of that will of course add to drop that center of gravity as much as possible, and I think there's no truck on the market that does that better than this Phoenix. You will also see some rod ends over here that are then coupled to some stainless steel pivot balls, and seeing stainless steel pivot balls included right from the gate is great. 3-link in the front with then a panhard over here, and I think that even that panhard mount is machined, so that is also really cool because that's on most trucks a failure point, and then a 4-link in the back. I think one of the most highlighted features of the Phoenix range of Vanquish trucks is the VFD Twin transmission, and rightfully so, because this thing packs so incredibly many features. One of them is dig. If you're not familiar with dig, you can lock up the rear axle and just drive the front to get your truck around some really extremely tight corners, for example. And then another function, and that one is really unique to Vanquish, is the selectable overdrive. And selectable overdrive allows you to on the fly shift from 6.5% overdrive, which it is currently set up as, to 46% overdrive. In case you're not familiar with any of these trail trucks and what they can do, 6.5% overdrive gives you a tiny bit more extra wheel speed in the front and also allows you to get like a tiny bit more traction in doing so. And then of course 46% overdrive is the extreme version of that feature. 46% overdrive, I definitely don't recommend driving with that the entire time, but seeing that you have the option and seeing that you can just on the fly shift from 6.5 to 46% is insane. There is one significant upgrade in this VFD transmission compared to the one that you find in the kit, and that is that this one has aluminum bearing plates, and that should really help with the durability of the sintered gears that are inside of this gearbox. Also seeing how low they have managed to concentrate all the weight of this VFD transmission, that is also completely unique. So rather than having the motor sticking out towards the front, they have managed to kind of flip that upside down, integrate it as much as possible in what is essentially an oversized skid plate, and drop that motor below some of the more essential parts of the gearbox. Every single part that you need to complete this, so that means the hardware to mount your servos, all of that stuff is included in this bag of spares and additional optional features. The only thing you need to add is your own servo. You can just plug that into this receiver as well, because this is actually a 4-channel receiver and you are all set up to go. I think in order to keep costs down and not include those servos right out of the gate, that is good thinking, because otherwise we would have ended up with like a $600-700 truck, and nobody wants that. So you will see there's a tiny set screw that keeps the arm locked into place currently. If you just thread that back, you can move this back and forward, thus unlocking the selectable overdrive or the dig. You can also use one of the features, you don't need to use both of them. So you can just kind of upgrade as you go if you want to use the third function first and then the fourth function eventually. I'm thinking that these are the same incision shocks that you also get with the kit. A lot of people have not been able to assemble these without them leaking, and this ready to run proves that it can definitely be done, because these are leak free. There were no stains inside of the box. They feel really extremely plush. There is a bleeder screw in the shock cap. These are aluminum bodied. I'm not sure what weight oil they're using, but I'm thinking somewhere around a 30-35 weight oil. Front and back are exactly the same, also in length. There's an integrated fuel cell over here that kind of continues inside some of the webbing that keeps the frame rails together, and that is something that you can also put some additional electronic gear into. You will find that there's plenty of room inside here. Speaking of plenty of room, this battery tray is pretty darn big. This continues in those floorboards with some rock sliders that are contoured to follow the body. Another thing that's contoured to follow the body is the inner fenders over here in the front that also have openings for rock lights in case you want to run some of those. Vanquish has really understood what we want to have in terms of scale as well by immediately including these front fenders. This should definitely be, I think, an industry standard. Every single ready-to-run trail truck should have inner fenders, so I hope that other companies see this and also take note and add this to their new ready-to-runs in the future, regardless of price tag. This radiator, it doesn't just look great, it also has a function in keeping those two inner fenders together. And what you end up with is a C-channel frame rail connected in so many different locations, like for example over here with that fuel cell, and also over here with those front fenders, and then that radiator piece, and you end up with something that is incredibly stiff. Some really nice performance-oriented front and rear bumpers, nice and narrow. They do what they need to do in sliding over the rocks, but without them looking completely outlandish or like they don't belong on the truck. The included ESC is a rebranded Hobbywing 1060 ESC that a lot of us will be familiar with. You have also seen this appear in a ton of ready-to-run trucks. What I do think is worth noting is how Vanquish has named all of this stuff. The speed control, the ESC, is called the VE1. Vanquish ESC1, I'm thinking. The receiver is called the VR1, Vanquish Receiver 1. You guessed it already, the steering servo is called the VS1, and then the motor is called the VM1. And this is then of course paired to the VT1, the Vanquish transmitter 1. The motor is a brushed 35 turn motor, which I think gives you a really good idea on what to use pinion wise, but also on what to use upgrade wise once you want to upgrade this to, for example, a brushless setup. The integrated BEC will allow you to use your 200 ounce-inches of torque in your steering servo to its maximum potential. This thing is metal geared. It also is coupled to a metal servo horn, a 25 tooth spline on it. So right next to the chassis mounted servo is an open slot for a servo winch, and then you could thread that through that front bumper because it does actually have an opening for a fairlead. I will now find myself a battery with an XT60 connector, charge it, put it in here and take this thing out on the trails and see how it performs. So far, I dare say, I have never seen a ready-to-run trail truck with this many features and also this many options for the future. Shipping of the ready-to-run version of the VS4-10 Phoenix starts immediately, so you can just go check out the links in the video description box and immediately pick one up. I hope this was an informative video and that it gives you a good idea on what to expect in this ready-to-run package from Vanquish Products. Their very first and also extremely promising ready-to-run, and I'm just really excited to see what the future holds. Perhaps at some point my prayers will be heard and they will even come out with a 6 scale. Wouldn't that be fantastic? So far I think we have plenty to drool about. Super cool to see them enter the ready-to-run market with what I think is a very capable and also sexy looking truck. Thanks so much for watching. Questions, comments, leave them in the box below. I will make sure that I reply to you. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do because it is free. Take care. Bye-bye.
We're back on.